Okay, hope everybody is well. A little bit difficult to talk about, to be optimistic tonight with everything that's happening in Israel, but I guess that shows that we do need Mashiach. We have not yet reached the era of peace and harmony. So
What's the most recent thing that's happening? I haven't heard for the last few hours.
nothing recently, except that I don't know. So there have been a few. I think by now 3 people who died within Israel. The latest was in a city that's quite north, Rishon LeZion, which is a suburb of Tel Aviv, not too far from Tel Aviv. That's one. That's pretty much where that on that end. But it just is just as scary. There's a lot of rioting within Israel, within cities that are mixed Arab and Jew, which is that's actually concerning. In particular, there's a city called Lod. That's where the airport is.
Right.
And I went to yeshiva there for a year, and it's very mixed between the Israelis and the Arabs. And usually there's obviously peace and harmony, but there's rioting and people are setting cars aflame. It's frightening. At least that's what I'm seeing on Twitter and all those places. But well, I guess in the morning in Israel we'll have more of an idea. So that's people, that's this, ultimately we have to live together. And that's, I guess, it's shifting consciousness. And ultimately we do need Mashiach. We do need to reach the era of peace and harmony, because we see what happens when we don't. So that's just to think about what's going on in the world right now. Think about where we're up to in the course. So if lesson 1, we looked for the optimism and we called it the body of redemption. And lesson 2, we spoke a little bit about what is the soul of redemption. And in short, if I could just summarize lesson 2 very quickly, I think we said that that the soul of the Mashiach is that the world today, even the definition, the spiritual definition of the word world is olam, which comes from the word he'elem, which is concealment. And in the world of concealment, you cannot necessarily appreciate and have the awareness of holiness, of divinity, of the goodness that's in the world. And the Messianic era is the time when that concealment is penetrated and the concealment is lifted, and you can see the oneness and the truth and the goodness within the world. And that's why Maimonides, as we discussed, talks about that important point of Mashiach is not just the peace and harmony, but the awareness that people value and people understand the existence of God as the foundation of reality, which then leads to peace and harmony. So what we want to do tonight is talk a little bit more about the concept of the spiritual redemption and how it works, and more importantly, at least mystically, and more importantly, how we bring about that era, that spiritual awareness throughout our service in this world and throughout history, right? Because we spoke about how we have like the 6 days of creation, which is the 6,000 years of history, and then you have the Messianic era, which is like the Shabbat. So just like you work all weekend, Shabbat, you rest or you benefit from your labor, right? The Talmud says, if you have not worked on Shabbat, you'll have nothing. If you have not worked in the 6 days, you'll have nothing to eat on Shabbat. So similarly, when we serve, what we're doing in this world right now is going to lead to the Messianic era, and we want to explore that a little bit more. And we begin with the question of, in general, if you look at page 97, why do you do a mitzvah? So choose any mitzvah you want, and you ask yourself why you do it. And they list a bunch of benefits or possible reasons why we would do the mitzvah. Because God said so. It makes life more orderly and stable. It makes my life more spiritual. It strengthens my Jewish identity. It feels right. It makes the world a better place. I believe that God will reward me for doing mitzvot. I'm afraid to disobey God, or other reasons, maybe because the latkes taste good. But you get the point that there's a variety of reasons why people would serve God. And if you look in general, even the Torah, last week's Torah portion that we read just a few days ago, text number 1, if you follow my commandments, If you follow my statutes and keep my commandments and observe them, I will provide you rains in their proper time. The earth will give its produce, and the trees of the field will yield its fruit. So, in some sense, what the Torah is promising us is if we serve God, we will be blessed. And similarly, that's if you do a mitzvah, you'll get the blessing. But similarly, throughout history, if we do God's will, then we'll be, so to speak, rewarded with the coming of Mashiach, with the Messianic era. So we want to think about for a moment is the relationship between the concept of the mitzvah, the reward, and the mitzvah. And this is something I think we've mentioned in the past JLI classes, but I think we'll mention it again today just very quickly. Let me see if I can pull up the slides and get some color. Get some color because it's late at night. So it's always good to have some color here. Okay, see if I see what I know what I'm doing here. Okay, I think we have some color going. Okay, this can never happen. Good news, you cross out the never, so that's good. Reward. Okay, so this is something we talk about often. You do there's two methods or two modes of reward. One is you call reward. So I work for you, so you pay me. Now there's no inherent connection between the work I do and the reward you are giving me. So if I work for you and I plant your garden, you're going to give me a few dollars. The money and the work are not related. I'm just going to exit the screen for a second because I want to let Jonathan in. There we go. Apologize. Play. Okay. Then there's another type of reward, which is not a reward, but a result. So if you build your home, if you invest the effort and you build your home, the reward will be that you'll have a home, but it's not really a reward. It's really a result, right? So if I plant my garden, the reward is that I have a nice garden. It's not a reward. It's a result. It's a direct outgrowth from what I have done. And what we're trying to say here now is that when we do the mitzvah, the good deed, the world that's going to be created through the good deed is not a reward. It's not like God says, okay, if you fulfill my wish list, I'll then bring peace and harmony and I'll bless you and eradicate famine, etc., and eradicate illness. No, it's not a reward. It's a result. And that's a big idea that we're going to discuss today. I'm going to read it inside the Tanya, text number 2 from the founding book of Chabad philosophy. This ultimate perfection of the age of Mashiach and the resurrection, namely the revelation of the infinite radiance of God in this physical world, depends on our actions and our work throughout the duration of exile. For the reward of a mitzvah is a result of the mitzvah itself. This is because with the performance of a mitzvah, one elicits God's infinite radiance so that it descends into and is integrated within the physical matter of this world. What is he saying? He's saying as follows: the reward for the mitzvah is the mitzvah. So what is a mitzvah? As we will discuss, a mitzvah is the process by which we bring the light of God into this world. When you have enough light of God into this world, you penetrate the concealment that we discussed last week. And that's what we're going to try to track a little bit and see how exactly that works. So the first thing we want to look at is we want to think of a metaphor, an interesting metaphor. Okay, so let's just look at, this is going back to the metaphor of last week. We said that the purpose of our world of creation is to build a home for God in this world. Now, the Kabbalah explains that the word home is an interesting metaphor. What's the difference between a home and everywhere else? So one important difference is that when you're not in your home, you're not yourself. If I come to your home, hopefully I'm on my best behavior. If I go to the store, I know people are looking at me. When could I just come and kick off my shoes if my wife allows, and put my feet up and eat pickles and drink the pickle juice and do whatever I want to do? When am I in my natural environment? That's when I'm in my home. So in other words, everywhere else in a way, I'm not really myself. It's myself the way I present myself. It's a professional setting or a friend setting, whatever the setting would be. It's the way I'm interacting with the outside world. But when am I myself? I'm myself when I'm in my home. And the same thing is when we say we want to make a home for God, right? I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to put on this picture. I'm not going to run around the room with my fake airplanes, and at least not this point in my life. But in my house, you never know. I may do it. If you come, you'll see. You may see me doing that. So when we say we want to make a home for God in this world, we mean we want God's full presence revealed, God's essence revealed. And that is, going back to the metaphor of last week, building a home for God. That's the purpose of creation. Now, we have to elaborate upon this and figure out what does it mean that a mitzvah fulfills the purpose of creation and brings the goodness into the world and ultimately is the cause for the result, the positive result, even the physical result that we get into this world. So it's a few questions. How is it done and how is it the cause? So we have a metaphor, and the metaphor is the piano metaphor. And the question is, what is a piano? And it's an easy question for us because we know what music is. But for the sake of this metaphor, let's think that there are three universes. One universe is the universe we are in. People know what music is, and that's universe A. Universe B is that there are people, but those people have no idea what music is for whatever reason. That's universe B. Universe C, there's no people. There is woodpeckers. Okay. Now I ask you, what is a piano? Well, it depends. If you're in your universe A, you know what music is. Of course, you see a piano, you see the ability to create music. Wonderful. What happens if you don't know what music is? You're in universe B. What is a piano? A piano is this wonderful piece of furniture. You can actually put your flowers on the piano. Some homes I go to, they're large pianos. They got all the pictures from back 6 generations back to the old country sitting on top of the grand piano. Nobody plays the piano, but it's a beautiful piece of furniture, right? So what are we saying? We're saying, yeah, it's a wonderful thing. It's a nice piece of furniture. It's true, a piano is a nice piece of furniture, but are you really truly getting to the essence of what this piano could play? Of course not. And of course, if you're in universe number 3, where there are woodpeckers, if you're a woodpecker, a piano is a wonderful place to have lunch, right? You can peck away at the wood, and it's a wonderful thing. So what we're trying to portray here is that there are different stages, in other words, different perceptions of the same reality. And what we're trying to say is that in this world, the divine presence is everywhere, right? The piano is here. The fact that we don't see the piano is because we don't see the music, right? The music is everywhere. The ability to create the music, the ability to create, to interact with God is everywhere. The fact that we don't see it that way, it's because something is wrong with our perception, and we want to shift our perception. When we shift our perception, we'll understand and be able to create the music. And that's what we say here. If you clean your glasses or you put on the glasses, what we do is we reveal what was there, but we didn't previously see. We all saw the piano. Everyone's looking at the same raw material, but on the same world, same reality. But the question is, what is the meaning of this reality? What's the ultimate purpose of this reality? That it depends on our perspective. And the mitzvah, as we will see, the mitzvah changes and alters that perspective and allows us to see the actual music that is within the universe. And how does this happen? So we'll talk about that a little bit. So the first thing we want to say is that there's 2 functions of the mitzvah. There's the function A is the general fulfillment of God's will, and then there's specific spiritual refinement. In other words, every mitzvah has something in common. What does every mitzvah have in common? We're using something inconsistent with the divine will. So you have something physical that's not holy, but then you say, look, God wants me to do something with this thing. God wants me to take a piece of bread and give it to the poor person. Okay, what am I expressing? I'm expressing that this physical thing is here for a purpose. I'm connecting the physical object with its purpose. And that is true about every mitzvah. And then there's also a specific spiritual refinement, because every mitzvah happens within a certain part of myself. One mitzvah with my foot, one mitzvah with my hand, one mitzvah with my head. I have to think. And every mitzvah takes a different part of my body, but also every mitzvah interacts with another aspect of the world. And when I do so, I'm affecting, so there's the general function of the mitzvah, and then there's the specific function of the mitzvah. And to think about this for a moment is a fascinating reading. Where I love text 6. It's actually really funny. We'll get there in a second. So function A is penetrating concealment, right? We said the physical reality is concealment. You don't see anything holy. But the moment I use the physical reality consistent with the will of God, I'm saying, no, this is not just a mere physical reality. It's here for a purpose, and I'm using it for the purpose, and I'm sort of allowing the light to enter. And then you have every specific mitzvah, which every mitzvah changes a different part of ourselves. And also every mitzvah changes a different part of the world, which we'll get to in a second. That's text number 6. So in a general way, every mitzvah action counteracts the inherently selfish self-perception of physical reality and reinforces that truth that it exists only to serve a higher purpose. And in a specific way, each mitzvah makes a particular part of the world more spiritual, more spiritually refined, more generous, more aware, more respectful, more loving, more connected, etc. So we'll get to that in a minute, but I love text 6. So text 6 shows something that a lot of people don't like about Judaism, and that is that for some religions it's very convenient. All you got to do is all week do whatever you want. On the weekend, on the holy day, go to the house of worship. Be it Sunday, be it Friday. Other people, you can do whatever you want all week, all year. Ramadan, you have to behave. Hopefully you're behaving during Ramadan. Okay, what is Judaism? Judaism is a religion that really gets into your way. It really, everything you want to do, it interferes with with daily life to an extreme. So there's a beautiful medrash on page 107, text 6, and it's actually funny, but it's a deep truth once you understand what the purpose of the mitzvah is. So the medrash reads, God did not leave anything in the world without providing the people of Israel with a means of performing a mitzvah with it. And it's going to get funny, okay? So now I'm not going to synagogue. I want to go to work, okay? So I'm going to plow my field. Wonderful. You want to plow your field? Wonderful. There's a mitzvah. What's the mitzvah? A person proceeding to plow must heed. Do not plow with an ox and a donkey together. That's a commandment in Deuteronomy. Similarly, if one wishes to sow, okay, I plowed. Now I want to plant. Do not sow kilayim, hybrid plantings in your vineyard. You can't have a different species, specific species, such as the vine and the grain. You can't mix it. Okay, fine. Now I planted. Now I want to reap. When you reap your harvest in your field, leave any forgotten sheaves for the poor. Okay, I'm going to thresh. Do not muzzle an ox while it is threshing. I want to knead dough. Finally, I have the wheat. I have the flour. Okay, from the first of your kneading bowl, separate some of challah. Okay, I want to have an omelet. I have bread, but I have to eat the bread with an egg. Okay, you want to take the egg? No, you can't take the egg unless you send away the mother. Send away the mother bird. Okay, now I have to have some beef for supper. I slaughter a wild animal or fowl. Cover its blood with soil. You want to plant a tree. Observe the arla by abstaining from the fruit for the first 3 years. Bury a deceased relative. Do not mourn excessively by slashing yourself. Take a haircut. Do not shave the corners of your head. Build a house. Install a safety fence. Wear a garment that has 4 corners. They shall make for themselves tzitzit. Wherever you're going to turn, there's always the God intruding into your life, telling you how to do it. Now that's the negative. That's the superficial perspective. But if you say that, what is a mitzvah? A mitzvah is the means that we refine the world. A mitzvah is the means that we bring the holiness of God into the world. Then what we're saying is, no matter what you're going to do, there is a way to do it consistent with the Torah, and that's how you bring the refinement. Now, we're only, I hate to break the news to us, but we're only a very small minority of the world, 0.2%, 0.2% of 1%. And the question becomes, okay, so how do we think we're going to change the whole world? So, of course, there's a beautiful metaphor. The Rabbi Shneur Zalman discusses this in the Tanya, a full chapter in Tanya, but we're not going to make you read the full chapter in Tanya because it's late at night. So instead, we play a video which is more colorful. I'm having a little I think I'm having technical issues here. So I'm going to just close this and open the video. See if I can figure out how to do this. No, it's not sharing. I'll stop share. We'll try again. don't think it's sharing. What's going on here? Is it sharing? Do you see it? Do you see? You see.
Muster an army of workers, machines, factories, ships, trains, and endless natural supplies. What do you get? A pencil. In 1958, Leonard Read penned a classic to document the mind-boggling diversity of materials and skilled labors required for a single manufactured object. He detailed the production of a pencil, speaking in the pencil's voice. My family tree begins with a cedar of straight grain. Contemplate all the saws and trucks and rope and the countless other gear used in harvesting and carting the cedar logs to the railroad siding. Think of all the persons and the numberless skills that went into the fabrication of these logging tools. The mining of ore, the making of steel and its refinement into saws, axes, motors, the growing of hemp and bringing it through all the stages of heavy and strong rope. Reed describes railroad networks and communication systems that bring the logs to mills, and the millwork that produces thin slabs. He asks, how many skills went into supplying the heat, the light and power, the belts, motors, and all the other things a mill requires? Reed includes the workers who constructed the hydro plant that supplies the mill's power, trains that transport the slats, a factory that cost millions to erect and equip with brilliant machines that slit the slats and insert the lead, and the lead itself, produced by mixing graphite mined in Sri Lanka with clay from Mississippi and treating it with Mexican wax. The pencils receive 6 coats of lacquer and are labeled with carbon black mixed with resins. An eraser holder made of zinc and copper is attached, and black nickel rings are added. Finally, the pencil's eraser is a rubber-like product made with Indonesian rapeseed oil, Italian pumice, sulfur chloride, vulcanizing and accelerating agents, and cadmium sulfide. One pencil, millions of dollars, dozens of countries, thousands of miles. But we can add something radical that Reed never considered. What if this pencil belongs to David, who uses it for Torah classes? It helps him observe the Mitzvah of Torah study. That changes everything. Divinity generated by his Mitzvah illuminates his soul and body and elevates the pencil as well. That powerful godly light travels back along the pencil's production route, elevating the factory, railroads, minerals, investments, skills, lives, and all that Reed so vividly described. Think about that the next time you offer charity. Light a Shabbat candle or wind tefillin around your arm. With each mitzvah act, so much of this world is connected with divinity.
Okay, so there's a few things happening here. Number one, when I do a specific mitzvah, so it's not just the mitzvah, there's holiness within the mitzvah, but there's also holiness within my life, everything that led up to that mitzvah. So if I do a mitzvah, I give charity. Okay, well, I went to work for 6 days to earn the money to be able to give charity. So all that effort that was invested, and now science knows energy doesn't go anywhere. So everything is within the world. So all that energy that was invested is also sanctified, also becomes holy, also becomes connected to God. And so that's within my own life. But then you have, like the video portrays, you have everything that led up to the ability to do this mitzvah, and all the people investing their resources and their wisdom and their innovation to allow for this mitzvah. all of that becomes connected to God as well. Now, how come we don't see it? We don't see it yet. So there's a metaphor. You have a metaphor. So let's say there's a blackout. You should know from a blackout, you should have a generator. If you don't have a generator, like I didn't have during Sandy, so 4 or 5 days you're in the dark. And we live on Millbank Avenue, so we constantly saw the trucks. And there are trucks and there are crews and they're working and they're working and they're working. And you feel like, okay, they're working. I'm sure the light is going to go on soon. No, it doesn't really happen. It took 4 days. Why? Because when they're working, they're making all those connections. They're connecting the wires. They're allowing the electricity to flow. So even after the electricity is flowing, and that's true, the network is being set up. The network is almost complete, but the lights don't go on until the very last network is connected. The very last wire is connected. But when that very last wire connects, then the electricity that was being built throughout all those times leading up to this moment of connection, everything else becomes illuminated as well. So what we're doing now, not just us in our life, but historically, since the giving of the Torah, we are making those connections, bringing that electricity, bringing that energy of God into this world through the process of doing the mitzvah. And when we do that, we are ultimately transforming the world. We don't see it yet, but that is the spiritual idea of how we make that spiritual shift that will be revealed in the coming of Mashiach. So what are we trying to get to? We're trying to get to the original question. And the original question is, why do we do the mitzvah? Why do we do a mitzvah? And there are many answers. All those answers that we listed earlier are true. But one important answer, a Hasidic answer, is why do we do any mitzvah? Ultimately, it's to bring Mashiach. What is Mashiach? To bring the awareness of God into this world. And every mitzvah that we do is a step closer to completing that task. And when the task is complete, it's all illuminated. So that is the first big idea. And now that's the first big idea. Any questions, comments, jokes, disagreements? Now is a good time because we're shifting to the second big idea. Okay, so what we're getting to right now is, okay, so let's say we assume we know the purpose of creation. The purpose of creation is to have a perfect world. Perfect world is, has a body and soul. The body is eradicating the suffering. The soul is bringing the awareness of God. And the way we do that is through the mitzvot that we do each in our life and collectively throughout history, because there's an accumulating effect, and ultimately you get to that tipping point. So that's pretty much what we said in the last 2.5 weeks, 2 lessons and half of this lesson. But now the question is, how important is it for us to really think about it and be in touch with this information? So I'm going a little out of order of the book, but toward the end of the book, we're going to once again reread the quote of Maimonides. And Maimonides says it in all different ways, but when he lists the 13 principles. So of all those 13 principles, there's things that you have to believe in. The exception is the Mashiach. What does it say about the Mashiach? It says you have to believe that he's coming, and you have to anticipate he's coming. Okay, this is a new idea, right? It says I have to believe in God. That's the premise of that's one of the 13 principles. One of the 13 principles is that I have to believe in reward and punishment. Okay, but it doesn't say anywhere that I have to anticipate reward and punishment. Right? Why is that so important? Reward and punishment, if it doesn't happen today, it happens tomorrow. So what? Why is it critical that when it comes to the Mashiach, it says no? It's not enough to believe in his coming, but you have to anticipate the coming. So we want to think about that. I want to think why is that so important? And we move to the next section of the class, and we want to think about what is our purpose and how do we think of ourselves in our relationship with God. And like I like to say, okay, let me pull up the screen again, make it a little bit more colorful. Okay, where are we up to here? Okay, so what is this? This is, why do we do a mitzvah? Why do a mitzvah? We do a mitzvah in order to bring Mashiach. Okay, so what's the big idea? The big idea here is that according to Judaism, and you'll see some of the quotes, for example, in text number 7, page 110, we are partners with God in the work of creation. The Talmud says, well, if you keep Shabbat, you're not just recognizing, you're not just testifying that God created the world, but you're actually perfecting the world. And the term that is used in that context and in many other contexts is you're becoming a partner with God in creation. And that's why I like to say Judaism is not a religion for many reasons. But one difference between other religions is usually religion says you have to serve God. And Judaism, maybe it says that as well, but the deeper emphasis is not you have to serve God, but you have to partner with God. And we want to think about the difference between what does it mean to work for God, to serve God, or to partner with God. And the metaphor, of course, is we want to think about the difference between an employee and a partner. And the employee is very focused on the job description. You know what you have to do, you do it, you want to get paid. That's the employee. What is the partner? The partner, much more than the job description, the partner has to be in touch with the mission statement. What are we trying to achieve? Right? I'm not thinking about a specific act. Just tell me what I need to do. That is the attitude of an employee. So if a Jew says, I want to follow all 613 commandments, tell me exactly what I need to do and I'll follow it to the T. That's wonderful. You're a wonderful employee, but Judaism requires much more than that. What Judaism says is you have to be a partner. What does a partner mean? You have to understand and care and value for the mission. What's the purpose of this all? And we'll try to figure out why that's so important. So that's one difference between employee and employer. One is employee or partner. One is thinking about the job description. One is thinking about the purpose of the mission statement. The second thing is the employee is very focused on the reward. I'm doing my job. I want to get paid. The partner wants the result, right? The employee doesn't really care if the mission statement of the company ultimately is successful because I'm not really in touch with the mission statement of the company. But if I'm a partner, I really want to make sure that the result of this enterprise is actually being fulfilled. And therefore, the difference becomes clear when we think about, in the context of Mashiach, we look at the quotes from Maimonides. Maimonides writes, I believe and affirm that Mashiach will come and do not think that he will be delayed. Okay, this is very interesting. Let's read it inside. So we'll jump around a little bit in the order here. Text number 10a, if you look at page 116, is very powerful. So this is Maimonides is in the commentary to the Mishnah where he lists the 13 principles of faith. Says Maimonides, the 12th foundation of Jewish belief is the era of Mashiach. That is to believe and affirm that he will come. Okay, that makes sense. That in the future, in the distant future, that there will be a redemption. That's fine. That keeps us optimistic. That's wonderful. That all makes sense. But the surprising thing is what you see on your screen and what you see right here in Maimonides. And not to think that he will be delayed. In the words of the prophet Habakkuk, if he tarries, expectantly await him. So expectantly await, there's a word for chakeh. Lechakot means I'm waiting for something that's imminent, as opposed to waiting for something that's in the distant future. So why is it so important to believe that Mashiach, not only he's coming, not only there will be a good in the distant future, but that it's imminent? So you also have to think about the partner metaphor. If I'm a partner, there isn't a partner that does not think that the goal and the mission is achievable. Because if it's not achievable, I'm out of here. If I'm an employee and I don't think we can get to Mars, but you hire me to try to get you to Mars, I don't care. What do I care? Right? I'm going to work and we're not going to be successful. It doesn't matter. I'm getting my paycheck. But if I'm a partner and I want the goal, I have to believe that the goal is possible. And I have to believe that the goal is imminent. If not, I'm not going to invest here. So what we're trying to say here is when the Talmud says, when Maimonides says, you have to anticipate the redemption, what it's really telling you is you have to get in touch with the purpose of creation and you have to be invested to the extent that it becomes your purpose and your mission, and therefore you believe it's possible, and therefore you believe it's imminent. And I'm turning back, and there's a metaphor from a great Hasidic teacher. He's a contemporary rabbi. I knew him very well. I know him very well. He was one of the teachers of Chabad philosophy in the central yeshiva of 770. Text number 8, he brings up an interesting metaphor. A Jew can argue practically, why is it important for me to know that the redemption will arrive someday? I need to do my work and fulfill that which God instructs me to do. It's not my business to know or to be concerned with the greater objectives and the results of my service. So tell me what to do, and I will do it, and I'll follow the law to the T. And wonderful, that's all I need to know. The fallacy of this approach should be self-understood. But here is an illustration. Imagine a soldier in the midst of a battle standing up and saying, it's not my business to know why my commanding officer gave me an order to fire my weapon. All that is important is that I meticulously follow the orders handed down by the chain of command. The fact that my actions impact the outcome of the battle, causing the enemy to retreat and bringing my side closer to victory, is irrelevant to me. I just need to shoot my rifle. This soldier, even if he dutifully executes every order he is given, will lack morale and passion. Moreover, without a doubt, to one degree or another, it will negatively impact the performance of the battlefield. It's not enough to fulfill the order. You have to understand the overall mission. First of all, for purposes of morale, so you're enthusiastic and you're able to do it. Number two, if not, you're going to make a mistake because you don't understand the big picture here. The same is true regarding our service of God through Torah and mitzvah observance. We cannot claim that it is not our concern whether or not our service affects the long-awaited victory. We must know that there is a campaign underway and that it is our mission to bring it to its successful conclusion. We must be keenly aware of the reality that with each additional mitzvah, we reveal more godliness in this world, thereby moving a step closer to the ultimate triumph. Now we have a fascinating story in the Talmud that may bring this point home. I'm not sure. According to the JLI, it does. Certainly an interesting story, so we'll tell the story. I guess there's a surface reality, and then there's the inner truth. I guess that's always good to think about. The employee doesn't need to believe in the company's success. The partner has to be certain of the success of the company. Otherwise, I have no idea why he's a partner here. He should check out. Okay, fine. Now, here's the interesting story from the Talmud. The story of the Talmud is that there was a great Talmudic sage, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, final generation of the sages of the Mishnah. So that puts him about the 2nd century. And he was a very spiritual guy. He merited, he was able to see Elijah the prophet would come and reveal himself to him. So one day he asks Elijah, he says, look, I'm very curious. I want to know when Mashiach will come. So Elijah says, look, don't ask me, go ask Mashiach. Where is Mashiach? Well, Mashiach, of course, is sitting Mashiach is sitting in Rome, but outside the city of Rome. Who's Mashiach? It's a very interesting thing. The Mashiach is a person that is just, at that point he had no power or anything, but he's the potential Mashiach, so to speak. So he says, go to Rome, go to the outskirts of Rome, find Mashiach, and you will talk to him and ask him when he's going to come. So he says, how am I going to know who he is? He says, well, look, you'll see. He's amongst the poor people. He's amongst the lepers of sitting outside the city. But there's a distinction. What's the distinction? We'll read in the text that all the other people with the illnesses, when they change the bandages, they take off all the bandages and then they put on new ones. But not Mashiach, because he has to be ready. Maybe he has to be on call. Maybe God wants him to redeem the people. And he's not going to have time. He's going to take him 20 minutes to bandage himself. It's not going to be good. So he takes off one bandage at a time and changes one bandage at a time. That's how you'll know. So Mashiach shows up. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi takes the trip from Israel to Rome, finds the Mashiach, says, how you doing? Wonderful. When you coming? He says, today. Now you know the end of the story. Mashiach didn't come then, because he still didn't come. Now Yeshua ben Levi is totally disappointed, disillusioned, and he wants his money back. No. Next time Elijah comes, he says, what's going on here? So let's read the text inside. Let's see how much of the story is in the text. So this is where this is
119 to 20.
Oh, 119, wonderful. So you got the story. Let's just read the end. The last two paragraphs. The second last paragraph. Rabbi Yeshua came back to Elijah and complained. He lied to me. He told me that he is coming today and he didn't come. Elijah responded, this is what he told you. Today, if you will listen to my voice. It's a verse from Psalms. God says, the salvation will come today if you listen to my voice. Oh, it was a trick. So he told him today. He didn't mean today. He said today, but it's contingent. Just like King David says, today, if you follow God's commandments. So today, if you, when he said he's coming today, means he's coming today if you all repent and you all follow God. Okay, wonderful story. It's very cute. And as kids, we love the story because Mashiach is so clever, he even tricked Yeshua ben Levi, the great sage. But the question is, what's happening here? What's the deeper message? Why can't Mashiach tell him, I'm coming today if everybody behaves, if everybody shapes up? So something about the story is bringing out this point that our attitude, Mashiach wants Yeshua ben Levi's attitude to say he can come today. Now, if I would say come today, if everybody repents, to say, oh, that's never going to happen, that's going to take 2,000 years. And that may have been true. But the attitude is, because we're not working for God, because we're partners with God, you have to believe the mission is possible. And if you do believe the mission is possible, then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if I don't, not thinking about the mission, and not thinking about the overall purpose, I can be a wonderful employee, but I'm not a partner, and I'm not doing that part of what God wants of me, to take ownership for the purpose of creation. And in simple English, what that means is, that means the Mashiach. And that's a beautiful text. That's the commentary, text 12. So this is a commentary on that story. And he says, very interesting. He says like this, 14th century commentator, the Torah states that the Spirit of God hovered over the surface of the waters. We had that last week, referring to the soul of Mashiach. This informs us that the soul of Mashiach has been standing at the ready ever since the 6 days of creation. It hovers over the waters, held back only until we return to God, as it is stated. Today, if you listen to my voice, what is it saying? It's saying that verse that we discussed last week that says, second verse of Genesis, Spirit of God hovers above the water, means the ability to bring the world to perfection is available. It's hovering above the earth. All we have to do is bring it down. It's accessible, it's doable, and that's our attitude. And here is a long text. It's a final text, but it's a long text. And this is a text that the Rebbe spoke in the 80s, page 125. And the Rebbe always, but especially later in his life, would constantly talk about the coming of Mashiach and remind people that you have to pray for Mashiach, and that Judaism is so focused on Mashiach as we pray 3 times a day, and constantly talking about Mashiach and saying we have to prepare and be ready. And the Rebbe himself would question this and say, people think this is strange because it's not common. And people think that it's just a dream. And as we will see, so he's sort of raising these questions. And then the Rebbe responded by bringing a Hasidic discourse that discusses the idea that what is a dream and what is reality. So there's a verse from the King David's book of Psalms, one of the most beautiful Psalms, I think, Psalm 137, is that, it's not 137, it's not 137, but it's a little earlier, it's in the 130s. We say it on every Shabbat before the grace after meals. And what we say there is, B'shuv Hashem et Shivat Zion, when God returns the captive of Zion, will be like a dream. In other words, what the psalm is saying is that once the Messianic era comes, we look back at the exile, and the exile is a dream. So the question becomes, what is the true reality? While you're dreaming, you're not able to sense what is the reality. But the true reality is you only figure out when you wake up. And what we're saying is that, going back to the metaphor of the piano, because we started with it, so we'll finish with it. The metaphor of the piano is, if we don't understand the music, then somebody talking about music to us, we don't understand that this piece of furniture could create the music. But that's only our perception. But if what Judaism is teaching us is that ability for the Messianic era to come, for the world to reach perfection through our mitzvot, that is as true as the music is, even though we're dreaming in a sense that we don't sense the music. So that's the story in short. Maybe we'll read it inside, but I'll summarize after and play the closing video after, and maybe we'll finish a little bit early because everybody was so well behaved. Okay, let's read text 13, page 125. We have been discussing the redemption and the era of Mashiach. Some in the audience are genuinely astounded at this, although for obvious reasons they do not openly voice their amazement. How can an individual, of course the Rebbe is talking about himself, how can an individual appear in public week after week and repeatedly and unceasingly discuss a single subject, the coming of Mashiach? Moreover, this individual emphasizes that he is not merely discussing the published Torah materials on this topic, in other words, as a theoretical discussion. Rather, he is discussing our righteous Mashiach's actual coming in our tangible reality here on physical earth. And immediately on this very day, Shabbat Parshat Pinchas 5744, 1984, This individual further instructs others to sing on each and every occasion. Sheibana Beit HaMikdash, may the holy temple be rebuilt speedily in our days. I remember this when I was a kid, up till about 10 years old, from 5 years old to 10 years old. Every Shabbat, I went to the Rebbe's Hasidic gatherings. The conclusion of the gathering, the Rebbe would turn to the Chazan, to the cantor, and say, start the song Sheibana, and they would sing about the rebuilding of the temple. So that's what the Rebbe is referring to. And he points out that speedily in our days does not refer to the very near future. It means quite literally speedily today. Certainly, every Jew believes that Mashiach can come at any moment, in keeping with one of the fundamentals of the Jewish faith that states, I await his coming every day. Nevertheless, they wonder, how is it justifiable to discuss this topic without let up and to emphasize on each occasion that Mashiach can come at that very moment? Is it not rather challenging to expect people to relate to Mashiach's imminence as if it were a tangible fact of our reality? So why does this individual speak incessantly about this on every occasion and with such single-minded intensity, as if to forcefully ram the idea into the minds of his listeners? Their conclusion is that all this is a beautiful dream. And we recite in our prayers, may all my dreams be positively fulfilled for me and for all of Israel. In other words, it's a dream. The guy's dreaming. Nice, but not realistic. If so, they claim, there is truly no point in discussing one's dreams at such length and with such frequency. The truth, however, is precisely the opposite. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi delivered a discourse based on the verse, when God returns the exile of Israel, we shall be as those who have dreamt, Psalms 126. He explained that our current state of exile is comparable to a dream, because in a dream, one sense of perception can tolerate the most contradictory and irrational things. In other words, our current reality is a dream, whereas the world of Mashiach is our true reality. In a single moment, the situation can be reversed from one extreme to the other. We can awaken from one dream of exile and enter the true reality, the actual state of redemption. If so, each and every individual present in this room certainly has the ability to make the redemption come imminently, come immediately, not tomorrow or in the near future, but right now on this Shabbat, Parshat Pinchas 5:744, which is 1984, before we even have a chance to recite the afternoon prayers. Simply stated, at this very moment, we open our eyes and see the Mashiach in the flesh with us here in this room. This is just a little taste of the Rebbe's attitude, again, highlighting this idea that if you're a partner, you believe in the mission. If you ever spoke to anyone who invested in a company, they believe in it, and they talk to you as if they see the success happening and they see that the result before their eyes, and that is our attitude toward the future. It's not distant future, it's imminent. We believe it's possible. One more slide or two, play a quick video. We will awaken from the dream of reality and enter the true reality redemption. Okay, now we're just going to play the concluding video, which is the summary, and then we first have to find it.
Lesson 3, Superhuman versus Superhumans. 1. The purpose of creation, according to Hasidic teachings, is God's desire for a home in our material world and corporeal reality. 2. The physical world is referred to as the lowly world because it obscures the truth that God pervades every aspect of existence. Making the world a home for God means to penetrate this concealment and transform physical reality into a place that expresses the divine goodness and perfection. 3. The Messianic world is not only a reward for doing mitzvot, but is the actual result of these actions. A mitzvah transforms the object with which it is performed from a self-defined existence into an instrument of God's will. In addition, each mitzvah makes a particular part of the world more receptive to spirituality, bringing it one step closer to expressing the divine goodness and perfection. 4. The mitzvot directly engage with only a small percentage of the physical universe and of each individual life. But each mitzvah action is the product of countless other actions and processes. In this way, the whole of creation is ultimately transformed. 5. The sages teach us that by doing mitzvot, we become a partner with God in the work of creation. There are a number of distinctions between a partner mentality and an employee mentality. A, an employee is driven primarily by his or her job description, whereas for the partner, the company's mission statement is the driving force. An employee is motivated by reward, whereas a partner is results-driven. C, a partner is confident of the success of the enterprise. 6. The 12th foundation of Judaism, by Maimonides' count, is not only the belief that Mashiach will come, but also the daily anticipation of the redemption. When we understand that the true nature of reality is the divine goodness and perfection, the expectation of Mashiach's imminent coming is more realistic than the concealment that obscures this truth.
Okay, so this was a little bit, the last two lessons were a little bit mystical and spiritual. Next week, we focus on the historic. We want to look at all of history and see how this process of leading to the redemption has been unfolding throughout Jewish history, throughout all of history. So we move from the more spiritual to the more historic. So we're going to come at this from different angles. Thank you for joining and participating, and always good to see you. And we should continue to see each other in good health.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a wonderful night. Thank you.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rabbi. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too. Be well. Good to see you.